Yo, what's up guys, welcome to my humble YouTube channel where I bring you fanfiction that will brighten your days. Before we start, a subscribe is greatly appreciated, and don't forget to leave a like and ring the bell icon so you won't miss exciting new fanfiction stories. Tensura. Melting the Eternal Frost by JackDaWeb Chapter 18 Founding Festival, Finale. Luminous Pav, I'm beginning to think that I was right all along. There really is something more between Rimuru and Velzard. If it were anyone else who so casually touched her just like how he did, then I'm positive their entire concept would have been erased in an instant. Yet here he is, being incredibly friendly with and even affectionate towards her. I have been keenly observing their dynamic with one another for quite some time now and have come to the conclusion that she's more than just his supervisor. I know a thing or two about being affectionate towards someone, and what I see between them is exactly that. Foo. How lucky that Slime truly is. Not only does he have such a beautiful woman at his side, but she's also the most powerful individual in this world. Well, I'm not sure if that's 100% true. Although I'm quite strong myself, individuals in the catastrophe class are beyond my understanding. They possess power capable of causing untold destruction and bending reality to their will, making it quite difficult for me to rank them objectively. From my very limited knowledge, I know that Velzard is much stronger than that damn evil lizard and is at least above the Scorched Dragon. Given that Velzard is often referred to as the strongest of the true dragons alive, it's a fairly logical thing to assume. It's also just common knowledge among those who have a keen understanding of this world's hierarchy of power. Guy and Milam are also in the catastrophe class and are supposedly relative in terms of strength, although I've never seen either of them fight seriously, so I can't say for certain. All I know is that they fought for 7 days straight, causing the lands of the West to turn barren and lifeless. Speaking of Guy, Velzard also used to reside in the ice continent with him, meaning they've probably fought at least once, but I'm unaware of the results. All this is to say that I can't conclude with absolute confidence that Velzard is the strongest being in this world. One thing is for sure though, she's most definitely in the top 3. And a rather scary thought is that Rimuru is steadily climbing the ladder of strength. He's already capable of defeating a true dragon by himself and can even utilize their magic. Excluding Guy and Milam, he could probably handle the rest of the octagram in a battle by himself. Pushing my thoughts aside, I turned my attention to the outside world. Rimuru had just dug himself the deepest grave of awkwardness one could possibly imagine. Foo, while I understand having thoughts of lust take over you, he needs to control his urges better. Time and place are crucial after all. The same could be said for Velzard if I'm being honest, but hell would have to freeze over before I even think about saying that to her face. This is not what it looks like, Rimuru yelled defiantly as he quickly let go of Velzard's waist and backed away. She simply giggled in response and put some more comfortable distance between both of them. Ha. I didn't know you had it in you, Rimuru. Gazel joked loudly, earning a chuckle from the others. Rimuru's face turned incredibly red and he lightly stomped on the ground with both his fists clenched. Stop, he shouted desperately. Unluckily for him, his pleas went unheard. Foo, in all my millennia of living, I never thought I'd see anything like this, Elmesia remarked teasingly, causing Velzard to giggle in amusement along with her. This is quite the sight to see. They're really tag-teaming Rimuru right now. A true dragon and a demon lord, now that's an unexpected relationship. Hinata chimed in smugly while wearing a cheeky smirk on her face. Gosh, I'd really love to join in on this fun, but I have to maintain my maid persona. It's really not like that, at least. Not yet. Rimuru muttered the last part so quietly to wherein only very few of us even heard it. For a moment, I noticed Velzard's eyes widen and her cheeks turn red, but her expression quickly reverted to normal. My, so he really is planning to be in a relationship with her. Truly a lucky slime. While I'm a bit salty about it, I place his odds of succeeding extremely high. Even an idiot could see that Velzard holds strong feelings for Rimuru. I'm not sure if anyone else saw it, but she was the one who initiated their interaction earlier when she seductively grabbed his chin out of nowhere. I was never expecting the White Ice Dragon to have a personality like this, although I can't say I'm disappointed. Weirdly, I see some elements of myself in her. She's very assertive and incredibly haughty. Another thing we share in common is our raging and nearly uncontrollable sensual desires for the person we love. I'm sure that given the chance, Velzard would pounce on Rimuru without a second thought, just like how I do the same with Hinata. I turned my attention to the kids to see their reaction to the whole thing. Safe to say they looked incredibly shocked and in disbelief regarding Rimuru and Velzard's very intimate interaction earlier. After witnessing something like that, I can't exactly blame them. Even I had the same reaction when I first noticed how close they were to each other. Curiously, one of the kids, a little girl with waist-length black hair and blue eyes, looked rather dejected at the whole thing. While her peers were simply surprised and bewildered, she had a look of sadness in her eyes. If I recall correctly, this girl was the one constantly idolizing Rimuru during the dinners we had. I wonder if she holds any sort of feelings for Rimuru, which might explain her current mood. Sensei and Velzard-sama are like that? One of the kids asked no one in particular. Rimuru looked just about ready to explode in embarrassment while Velzard turned to the kid with a devious expression on her face. What do you mean by that, Kenya-kun? Velzard questioned back mischievously with her scary grin. The kids now had a look of utter fear in their eyes, especially the one who asked the question. Oh dear, even that sent a shiver down my spine. She's terrifying, Rimuru better come and rescue that brat or else he's done for. The boy was now quivering in sheer terror as Velzard continued staring at him devilishly, awaiting his response. The other kids shut their eyes in horror while the rest of the guests simply watched on with amused expressions. Fortunately for him, Rimuru noticed his predicament and put his hand on Velzard's shoulder, releasing all tension in the air. The kids sighed in relief while the guests chuckled at the whole situation. Foo. I must learn how to become as terrifying as the Ice Queen herself. I'll definitely be taking notes next time. Sigh, please don't scare my students like that, Rimuru told Velzard tiredly, somewhat annoyed by her antics. Foo. I just wanted to have a little bit of fun around here, she replied cheekily, causing Rimuru to sigh for the millionth time today. Foo. I may not be able to beat him in battle, but I can beat him through sheer annoyance. Rimuru's pav curse you, horny me. Arg. That was the worst and most awkward predicament I've ever been in. It's worse than when Hinata dropped the bombshell of me defeating Veldora during that one dinner. Luckily, I think it's more or less over and we can now proceed to watching the first few challengers brave the dungeon for the very first time. Some more parties had arrived a few minutes after the first batch had already gone in. To my surprise, Caval's trio of idiots was one of them. Oh boy, they're not gonna even make it to the 10th floor. They'll either get lost on the first few floors or get demolished by a low-level monster due to sheer stupidity. Even with the unique grade equipment we gave them a long time ago, they're still gonna find a way to fumble. I looked over to the overprotective father, Errol, to see if he noticed his precious daughter who was about to brave this dungeon accompanied by her clumsy party. It seems like he hasn't noticed at all. He and a few others were fixated on one of the screens broadcasting Masayuki's team who just reached the 12th floor. Damn, they're progressing quite fast. At this rate, I might lose the bet. Seeing that Errol was too focused on watching, I walked over to Fuse and lightly tapped him on the shoulder. He's gonna freak out when he finds out that Caval's crew has entered the dungeon. Psst, Fuse-san. Can you come with me real quick? There's something I'd like to tell you. I whispered with a cheeky grin on my face. He turned around to face me and I signaled to him that we should move over a few meters since I didn't want the others to hear. What is it, Rimuru Dono? He asked curiously and my grin became wider. Did you see one of the parties that just entered? I questioned and he shook his head. I placed a soundproof barrier around us to contain his inevitable loud reaction. Caval and his party just entered the dungeon not too long ago. I told him cheekily and his reaction was priceless. His mouth was agape and his eyes lit up in utter shock. What the fuck? He yelled in disbelief. Thanks to the barrier, no one except Velzard heard him shout. Ha. I know, right? I exclaimed loudly in amusement, but he was horrified. He began massaging both his temples in frustration and eventually calmed down somewhat. Those damn idiots aren't lasting a second in there. They'll probably get jumped by some weak monster or something. Either that or they'll become lost. He said in mild frustration. Ha. Those guys really gave Fuse a headache. Ha. Only time will tell how well they'll do in there. Who knows? Maybe they might become better adventurers from this experience, especially if they keep coming back. I remarked half-heartedly since I can't see those guys becoming competent adventurers anytime soon. Sigh, it's very unlikely. I suppose we should just watch and find out. He replied tiredly and I nodded. After dispelling the barrier, Fuse and I made our way back to the guests. They were intently watching the live broadcast of the various parties crawling the dungeon. I also noticed other groups of spectators have formed. The lobby was quite huge, providing plenty of space for multiple different crowds to watch the screens while still having lots of space between them. My group consisted of Velzard, a few of my executives, the esteemed guests, and myself. The other spectators were citizens of Tempest, adventurer parties, and visiting foreigners. From observing everyone watching, it was clear that one party out of the rest had stolen the show, and it was Masayuki's team. Everyone watched in astonishment as his crew easily made their way through the dungeon. While this might have given them the impression that the dungeon was easy to traverse, seeing the other parties struggling past the 10th floor would dispel such thoughts. Team Lightspeed was simply built differently compared to the rest, although more specifically, Masayuki's broken skill was what allowed them to advance this far. We watched on as his crew casually dispatched all the monsters coming at them while simultaneously avoiding the deadly traps. Masayuki himself looked absolutely scared shitless while his crew marched on fearlessly. They were doing most of the work, but for some reason, everyone else saw things differently from me. Most of the crowd watching were cheering for Masayuki alone, attributing the group's accomplishments solely as his. All he did was walk along timidly while his crew fought off the monsters or avoided the traps. I knew his skill played a major role in boosting his party's abilities and providing them with insane luck, but this is quite ridiculous. Its effects caused the spectators to view him in a heroic and admirable light even though he was clearly about to shit himself. Would you like to create a copy of his skill, Rimuru-sama? Huh? Don't we need to analyze him first in order to use skill duplication? That would require me to absorb him with Azathoth, something I'd rather not do. Due to him being within the labyrinth, it is possible to use the analytical abilities of Ramirez's small world, which she gave you access. Oh yeah, I almost forgot about that. To explain what seal meant, a few weeks ago, Ramirez, Veldora, and I created a new system to quantify the amount of energy within someone's body or soul. This energy can either be their magicule count, holy power, magic power, or anything of the sort. This is possible thanks to the incredibly precise analytical capabilities of Ramirez's skill. The appraisal is extremely accurate and gives out a specific value that quantifies the total energy of an individual, called an existence value. Aside from this number, the analysis also gives out a handful of useful information such as a person's race, blessing, magic, and skills. I've used this system to analyze the power of my peers and subordinates. We still haven't worked out a proper ranking system using the labyrinth's analysis, but we're getting there. Fun fact, it was through the appraisal of the labyrinth that I managed to confirm that Veldora does indeed hold a very high magicule count of around 88,100,000. It's even higher than Velzard's, although not by much since hers sits at an impressive 80,900,000. My existence value, or EP, existence points, for short, is around 25,700,000. Not bad for a mere true demon lord if I do say so myself. I'm sure that it'll increase even more when I evolve into a true dragon. What's even more impressive and kind of scary is that I can use True Dragon Release to assimilate the energy of Veldora and Velzard with me. Doing so would elevate my EP to an absurdly high number of around 194,700,000 since it meant adding the three of our values together. In such a state, I could technically be considered a true dragon in terms of raw power. However, I'd lack the fundamental part of representing a concept. Anyway, back to skills. The ultimate skill, God of Void, Azathoth, is the supreme skill created by Seal. True to its moniker of the Void God, it is capable of complete erasure, has infinite capacity storage, and even provides me with a nearly unmatched defense. But the most frightening thing is that I am far from being able to use its full potential. To fully utilize Azathoth, I would need to master its most frightening sub-skill, Imaginary Collapse. I've done a few more small-scale tests of the skill with the help of Seal, and I can now use Turn Null while only sustaining around 15% to 20% damage to myself. But that still means there are consequences to using it. If I generated too much of it at once, then I would be completely destroyed. Therefore, it is left as a last resort since it is also incredibly destructive. However, when I eventually evolve into a true dragon embodying the concept of nihility itself, I'd finally be free of all restrictions and be able to fully utilize Azathoth without consequences. But even if it's heavily restricted as of now, This skill is still leagues above anything I've encountered so far. Couple that with my other ultimate skill, God of Harvest, Shub Niggurath, and a skill like Chosen One, becomes completely useless for me. I don't think I'll be needing a skill like that at the moment, but I suggest having it analyzed just in case. Understood, Rimuru-sama. The information of unique skill, Chosen One, has already been stored within Shub Niggurath and is ready for duplication when necessary. Ha ha ha. As expected of you, Seal. Nice work, partner. Thank you, Rimuru-sama. I turned my attention back to the screen showing Masayuki's party and was utterly surprised. What the hell? They're already on the 19th floor. Looking around, I saw that several parties had already respawned in the lobby, seemingly having died on floors 10 through 15. Team Lightspeed, along with a few other groups, was advancing slowly but surely. The 20th floor boss is a B+ ranked evil centipede if I recall. Foo, it seems you were lost in your thoughts once again, Rimu-kun. You seem rather surprised at their group's current pace. Velzard pointed out suddenly with a smug tone. Sigh, it seems that I've forgotten to use thought acceleration again. HMPH. They're not out of the clear yet. In fact, things will only get more difficult from here. I stated matter-of-factly, but her attitude didn't change. Era, I suppose you haven't noticed how his group has encountered very little difficulty so far. While they won't clear the whole dungeon, they'll surely make it past the 50th floor, she retorted confidently. Then let's continue watching to find out. If they make it to the 50th floor but not past it, what'll it be? I questioned curiously. We can consider it a draw, she answered calmly while still smirking. Hey, I can't wait to make you do all my paperwork for 3 days straight. I joked haughtily, but her confidence didn't waver one bit. She looked me in the eyes with full certainty of victory. Foo, and you'll be doing a lot more if I win, she replied seductively while subtly licking her lips. Crap. Gotta divert the situation before the succubus dragon fully awakens. Yeah, I said dismissively, which made her chuckle. We then turned our attention back to the broadcast of Team Lightspeed, who were now facing the evil centipede. We watched intently as the battle commenced, with Jinrai taking immediately the offensive and delivering a powerful strike with a mace which pushed back the gigantic creature. He quickly got out of the danger zone as Jiwoo erected a protective barrier around him before striking the centipede with a powerful fire spell. Keeping up their momentum, Bernie pierced the body of the enemy with his spear before electrocuting it with lightning. Masayuki himself didn't do much aside from doing his best to avoid the debris and stray attacks. He looked absolutely terrified as he dodged the ongoing chaos with every fiber of his being. While he wasn't directly contributing to the battle, his skill was certainly boosting his allies' combat prowess. Sigh, it's a miracle that he's still even alive. Honestly, miracle is the right word to use considering his skill is a fucking cheat, literally just plot armor. Meh. Who am I to say anything? From the moment I reincarnated into this world, I was born with 2 absurd unique skills that paired perfectly with one another. And now those skills have evolved and reached their absolute pinnacle. If we compared Seal and my skills to Chosen One, in terms of overall capabilities, then it's not even a competition. Pushing my thoughts aside, I continued watching the battle, and it was clear that Bernie and Jiwoo were the most powerful of the group if you don't account for Masayuki's skill. Even if they were being boosted right now, there was no denying their skills and abilities. I'm starting to grow a bit wary of those two, so it's best to keep a watchful eye on them. Even though they yielded during our first encounter, their power is way too high to be considered just ordinary adventurers. They could potentially be spies from an unknown nation looking to extract information about Tempest and are simply acting as part of Masayuki's part to slip by without suspicion. The founding festival is open to everyone, so some spies may have snuck into the nation. Seal. Is it possible to wipe their memories after they finish with the dungeon? Just in case those two are indeed spies, I want to take preemptive measures. Yes. Through the use of memory manipulation, a target's memories can be altered or completely erased. However, this skill is still a bit experimental, so it only works on more recent memories. Whoa. That's still quite handy, especially for this situation. But when did I acquire this skill? I may or may not created it during my spare time. It can be used in many different situations, which is why I made it. This skill is now one of many stored within Shub Niggurath's skill storage. Ha. You really can't restrain yourself sometimes, huh? But I suppose that's one of your best traits. Fufufu. Praise me more, Rimuru-sama. Yeah, you're the best. Thank you, Rimuru-sama. Looks like everything will be just fine. On another note, this skill is quite powerful. I'm surprised it's only an extra skill given that it can be used to change or delete someone's memories. While I'm not sure if I'll have many uses for it, cases like this are perfect. And if we ever run into more spy situations in the future, then this is the best non-violent solution. I've also noticed that Seal seems to have a lot of fun with altering and creating skills, and it's become her favorite hobby, not that she has many to begin with. Once my plate becomes a little less full, I might start experimenting with skill creation myself. It does require a decent amount of magicules to use, but my EP is quite high, so it should be no problem. According to Seal, with the right amount of information and energy, it's possible to create an ultimate skill without needing a unique skill as a base, which is honestly terrifying to think about. And through the use of skill gifting, I can give skills to my subordinates as long as they're compatible with it. The first ones that came to mind when I thought about gifting ultimate skills were Benimaru and Diablo. I'm sure those two would absolutely go crazy with it. I decided to push my thoughts about creating skills aside, and I looked back at the screen to witness the defeat of the evil centipede, with Bernie having delivered the final blow. The group then proceeded to scour the entire floor for any loot they hadn't collected yet before making their way to the next floor. They seemed to be advancing through the dungeon with little to no effort, but things only get harder from here on out. If it weren't for the other parties struggling to make it past the 15th floor, I would have come to believe that this dungeon is easy to get through. Gazel remarked earnestly, and Errol nodded in agreement. My thoughts exactly. I initially thought that the levels weren't that difficult, but seeing the other groups facing huge hurdles made me think otherwise. Errol replied honestly. This guy really hasn't noticed his daughter yet, huh? Fufufu. But it should get more challenging from here on out. Isn't that right, Rimuru-san? Elmisia asked for confirmation, and I nodded. Indeed it will. The guardians on floors 30 and 40 will prove to be quite the obstacle, I stated excitedly, and the three of them nodded before turning back to the screen. We continued watching as Masayuki's group progressed past the 21st floor. Side note, since they're the first of 5 parties to clear the 20th floor, they'll be receiving an award of 5 gold coins. The reward system is something we put in place to encourage adventurers to brave the dungeon. And since the rewards restart each month, it also entices repeat runs. Masayuki himself looked to be less and less scared as they advanced further. I suppose the strength of his team, in addition to being boosted by his skill, gave him a false sense of security. I can't wait to see that all change when they make it to the lower floors. The guardians on floors 30 and 40 will prove to be quite difficult even for capable combatants. The 30th floor is an A-class Kijin with an EP of 65,000 along with 5 B-class Ogre subordinates. And on the 40th floor is a special A-class Tempest Serpent with an impressive EP of 150,000. While our ranking system isn't perfect yet, the data we use to evaluate individuals is very accurate. Beings are ranked into different classes using their existence value as the main determiner. Here are the following classes we have so far along with their respective EP ranges. F class has an EP below 1,000. D class has an EP between 1,000 and 5,000. C class has an EP between 5,000 and 8,000. B class has an EP between 8,000 and 10,000. These 4 classes make up the lower tiers of the rankings, as the next class has a massive jump in terms of existence value. The classes that follow will all have a wide range when it comes to EP. A class has an EP between 10,000 and 100,000. Special A class has an EP between 100,000 and 500,000. This class is in line with the old system's danger level of hazard class. S class has an EP between 500,000 and 1 million. This class is in line with the old system's danger level of calamity class and is reserved for demon lord seeds or beings of comparable power. Special S class, million class, has an EP exceeding 1 million. This class is in line with the old system's danger level of disaster class and is reserved for true demon lords or beings of comparable power. Catastrophe class, true dragon class, uses combat prowess and skills alongside EP to determine one's placement. This class is in line with the old system's danger level of catastrophe class and is reserved for true dragons or beings of comparable power. Abaddon class. A hypothetical class devised for a truly divine entity that has transcended the world's laws altogether. An individual in this class would have an EP of 500 million and above, which is more than the combined EP of the 3 living true dragons. Currently, there are no individuals within the Abaddon class. According to Ramirez and Veldora, Veldanava would have been the only one to qualify for this class. But since there's no way to determine his existence value, it can never be truly certain. Just the thought of this class honestly scares me, and I'm sure there's no way I'll even come close to getting there. It is within the realm of possibility, Rimuru-sama. Yeah, right. I'm just going to ignore CL's terrifying proposition for now. Besides, my ranking is pretty satisfactory at the moment, so there's no need to go overboard. After some careful deliberation, taking into account my battle against Veldora, I was officially placed in the True Dragon class or Catastrophe class, despite only being a true Demon Lord. Well, I guess I could be considered a unique case of a true dragon seed, but since there's no class between the Million class and True Dragon class, my ranking will have to suffice. I, along with Veldora and Velzard, are the 3 True Dragon class individuals within Tempest. This system might see some changes in the future, but I'll have to put that off for now. Splash! I heard the sound of flesh getting cut and blood splashing against a surface, and I immediately turned my attention back to the broadcast. The screen displayed a head and a decapitated body on the ground with blood being splattered everywhere. Yikes. How brutal. It looks like their luck is finally starting to run out, since Jinrai was caught in a cutting thread trap which immediately decapitated him. He seemed to be away from his party and was looking for loot before he got killed. I suppose greed was what did him in at the end. Scanning the lobby, I saw him having safely respawned with a horrified expression on his face. He frantically examined his body and held his head together to make sure he was completely alright. After hyperventilating for a few seconds, he eventually calmed down. That was brutal. Hinata shuddered in discomfort. I turned my attention to the children and saw that some of them had a terrified look on their faces while the others didn't seem too bothered by it. The trap was incredibly subtle and inconspicuous. Understandably, it got him. Lewis remarked casually, and the others nodded in agreement. While their team is down 1, it seems to me that he was the weakest of the group. Errol commented earnestly, and Elmesia looked at him curiously. So you're saying that their group isn't truly hindered by this loss? She asked for confirmation, and Errol nodded. I suppose we shall find out soon enough, since they've already cleared the 29th floor and are about to battle the next Guardian. Gazel said, which made my jaw drop in surprise. Already? I yelled in disbelief, which made the others look at me in confusion. Yeah. Were you spacing out, Rimuru Dono? Elmesia asked curiously, and I immediately felt my face heat up in embarrassment. Not again. To add insult to injury, I heard Velzard a few steps behind me giggling like a child. Era, you're incredibly aloof today, Rimu-kun. What are you thinking about so much? Velzard asked teasingly as she placed both her hands on my shoulders from behind. Ehehehe. I was just thinking about the various systems of the labyrinth and how we can improve them. I replied sheepishly, which made everyone around me chuckle in amusement, making me more embarrassed. Foo, you should pay attention to this next battle. I'm quite interested in the next Guardian they're about to face. Velzard urged softly, and I nodded. I turned my attention to the screen and saw the party of 3 standing a few meters from the 30th floor Guardian, the Frost Kijin, Shimo. Ah, this one. She's one of the ogres from the Kurenai unit which had evolved into a Kijin. Her capabilities with ice magic were quite exceptional, so I decided to make her a guardian of the dungeon. I explained enthusiastically. Indeed. It's quite fascinating to see a Kijin wielding ice, and she's quite powerful and skilled too. Velzard praised her genuinely, and I nodded in agreement. Shimo is a very adept user of ice magic, despite Kijins mainly being fire-based, and she's an incredibly skilled swordswoman to boot. Out of Benimaru's Kurenai unit of ogres, she was the first one to evolve into a Kijin. Her EP isn't high, but her affinity for magic and insane combat prowess easily compensated for it. I'd say she's capable of matching Sue or maybe even Benimaru in combat when they were still Kijins. The remaining 3 of Masayuki's group stood inside a large room with a floor covered in snow and ice, which made it incredibly slippery. Several giant pillars of ice were scattered around the floor that extended to the ceiling, providing structural support and serving as areas of cover. And to make things more difficult, a never-ending snowstorm ravaged this floor, hindering movement and making visibility extremely poor. I'm starting to think she might be too powerful for the 30th floor. I commend you three for making it to my domain, but this is where your adventure ends. Before I turn all of you into ice sculptures, I shall introduce myself. My name is Shimo, the Frost Kijin, and the guardian of the 30th floor. It was nice knowing you. Shimo introduced herself coldly before unsheathing her ice-coated blade. The sword itself was quite special too. It was forged by Kurobe and is a unique grade weapon capable of channeling Shimo's ice magic. Upon contact, the sword can be imbued with ice magic and quickly freeze the target. Yeah. I definitely placed her a few floors too high, and by a few, I mean a lot. She's definitely stronger than the Tempest Serpent on the 40th floor. Foo. I like her already. Velzard remarked cheerfully. Sigh, why am I not surprised? Shimo is a powerful ice wielder with an extremely cold personality to back it up. Of course, Velzard would take a liking to her. Now then, show me what you've got, Shimo. Less than yo. I'm finally back with another chapter. Apologies for having this one come out quite late. This chapter is the longest so far and I've been quite busy these last few days with school, but we're finally done. All we have left is graduation practice and I also have some band rehearsals. We finally have our first OC in this FIC, Shimo. I named her after the kaiju from Godzilla x Kong because I thought she was so cool, pun intended. She won't be too major of a character but she'll eventually stand alongside the other Onas in the future. Here's her current labyrinth appraisal. Name: Shimo, EP. 65,433. Race: Kijin Blessing. Rimuru Blessing title: Frost Kijin Magic. Less than fire magic greater than, less than ice magic greater than, less than wind magic greater than skill. Unique skill: near absolute zero. Resistances: abnormal condition resistance, pain nullification, physical attack resistance, thermal fluctuation nullification.